Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Ajahn Kovilo, and I'm streaming in from Monastery in New York. This month I've been studying Pali with Bhikkhu Bodhi, the foremost English translator. He's translated the Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta, Anguttara, and many other translations. So I've really been enjoying my time here. So yes, today we'll be talking about abandoning by using. That is the topic for today's discussion. And the format will be me kind of giving some reflections on this concept, which comes from, it's one of 7 types of abandoning, which you find in the Sabbasava Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya. It's Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 2. And this is the third type of abandoning, and I'll give some reflections on that for the first half hour or so, and then open things up for questions if anybody has any questions. So and you can always type in your questions at any point, and it's good to see people already tuning in. That's great. So just jump right in. So this particular way of abandoning the asavas, abandoning the defilements of mind, the corruptions of mind, the outflows or the inflows, however you want to translate this word asava. Basically, it's the ethically undesirable qualities of the mind, which as Buddhist practitioners, or really as human beings interested in cultivating a good life, these are the type of things that we want to gradually let go of. So there are many different methods that the Buddha gave for that. The Buddha specifically 7 within the Sabbasava Sutta, of which there is a link in the YouTube notes. So the first one is abandoning by seeing, then abandoning by restraint, abandoning by using, and that's what we're talking about today. Abandoning by enduring, abandoning by developing, abandoning by destroying, and abandoning by avoiding. So that's 7. So what we're looking at today is patisavana, so the type of mental unbeautiful qualities which can be abandoned by using. Using what? Not by using drugs. This is not a talk about drug use. By using what's referred to in the Pali discourses as the 4 requisites. So the Buddha was a user often of stock phrases, what's called in the study of texts, pericope. So this is one type of stock phrase which you would use again and again in different discourses, and that is the proper way to intelligently contemplate these 4 requisites so as to make maximum benefit of them. The 4 requisites are clothing, food, lodging, and medicinal requisites. And there was a specific formula for each one of these, which gives practitioners good guidelines for how to approach these realms, which really all of us have to interact with, whether you're a monk like me or whether you're not a monk. Still, you've got to eat, you've got to wear clothes, most of you, I would assume. You have to have some place where you live, and the body gets sick, so you have to have medicines as well. And what we'll be doing today is looking at these 4 requisites and how, looking at some specific monastic models for intelligent use of these 4 domains of human life. And specifically, these are called the 13 Dhutanga, or difficult practices. These are 13 extra practices which the Buddha let the monks practice if we want to. But there's some pretty inspiring things, and we'll be going through them as they relate to these different requisites. So we'll start off with clothing. So the reflection, which Buddhist monastics will do at least once a day. There are certain monasteries, certain people who practice this 3 times a day. So before eating, they reflect. While eating, they reflect again. And after they've eaten, they reflect, oh, did I use this clothing in a way which was in line with the Buddhist teachings, basically in line with intelligent use of physical clothing. So the reflection is, wisely reflecting, I use the robe. Or for non-robe wearers out there, wisely reflecting, I use clothing only to ward off cold, to ward off heat, to ward off the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, burning, and creeping things, only for the sake of modesty. So that's the general reflection for clothing. So basically, there are many different considerations which people in the world and in monasteries put into their choice of clothing every day. And many of them might actually lead to the increase of these asavas. So I think with clothing, you could say that, it can lead to increase of greed, or increase of jealousy, or of a sense of rivalry. Like, I've got the nicest Rolex, I've got the nicest Gucci bag, whatever it is. I imagine maybe there aren't many people listening to this who have Gucci and bags or aren't into that type of thing. But you can have lots of different considerations for why you wear the things that you do. And I think I would add into this isn't in the text, but your haircut. Why do you choose the haircut that you do? And this isn't, the bald guy, picking on, hairful people. But it's just a question, like, why do we ornament ourselves the way that we do? And again, most people watching this are not going to be monks, and you're not beholden to all the rules that we have as monks. So if you want the way that you wear your clothes, the way that you wear your hair to express something about you, then that's totally fine. You're perfectly free to do that. And if you're expressing something beautiful, you've got a shirt that says meditate, or you've got a hat that says I'm a meditator, or something more exciting and more stylish than that, then fair enough, you can wear that. For a counterbalance, we can look at, there are 2 different of these dhutanga, difficult practices for monks, on the very minimal end of the clothing kind of proliferation spectrum. So these 2 difficult practices, which monks can voluntarily take on for shorter or long periods, are just wearing one's 3 robes, or just wearing what's called cast-off clothing. So in a lay context, that would be you're just wearing clothes from the thrift store, or hand-me-downs, that type of thing. The 3 robe wearer practice is quite interesting. Basically, as monks, we only have to have 2 robes, but most monks have 3 robes. One of them, which is this thing right here, which I'm wearing, which is a large rectangle, 6 feet tall by about 9 feet wide, and we roll that up and wear it like that. We have another robe which is the same size but 2 layers, as like a blanket, or for cold weather. And then we've got something which goes around our legs, which we roll up, and that's about maybe 3 feet by 6 feet. And people who want to really minimize their clothing needs and minimize the amount of time that they have to spend thinking about what they're going to wear, or when they go somewhere, their bags can be really small. Basically, I can put all of my robes, if I'm practicing this, inside of my bowl, and I'm done. And I can pack up and go somewhere. So packing is really easy when you have minimal clothing, and it's doable. Certainly in a tropical country, I know many monks who've practiced this 3 robe practice. So yeah, what is this, seeing this model of sufficiency and contentment can be beautiful. Someone has just got 3 pairs of clothing, or 2. Some people don't even have that third double layer cloth. They just got the upper robe and the lower robe, and that's it. And I've seen some really bright monks, and they might not be as stylish or as kind of hip for American standards, but that is what it is. So yeah, what can if you wanted to take this practice on of minimizing the time you have to take choosing your clothes, minimize the greed that might go into choosing the best clothes to look a little bit better than your friend or your enemy or whatever it is, then you could practice giving away clothes. It's great. Giving away clothes is a lot of fun. Or selling them. You guys can use money, so you can even sell your clothes. That's something you can do. And there's an interesting psychological principle in the social sciences called Hick's law, which says that the amount of time that it takes to make a decision is correlated with the number of choices that you have. So if you're in an ice cream shop and you've got 30 flavors of ice cream, it's going to take you not necessarily 30 times as long to choose than if you only have one choice, but it will take you longer. And this is called Hick's law. And the same would apply to your clothing. If you've got less clothing, then you need to spend less time picking out, and you can spend more time doing whatever you want to do, pursuing your spiritual practice, meditation. When you've got only a few items of clothing to choose from, then it's definitely not going to pop into your mind in meditation that, what am I going to wear tomorrow? I'm sure for many meditators, non-monks, that does come up in your evening meditation. What am I going to wear tomorrow? Oh yeah, I can wear that outfit with this hat, and figuring it out. And you just don't need to do that arithmetic when you've only got very minimal clothes. Or if you're like Mark Zuckerberg, I don't know if he's still doing it, but basically had 10 or maybe 20 or who knows how many types of the same shirt, basically different, the same shirt in 20 editions, or 20 different shirts of the same type, and just wear the same thing every day. You don't have to choose, save some time. And if you do this rag robe practice, then what would that look like? If you only got your clothes from the thrift store, you'd save money. Or if you only took hand-me-downs. And certainly in America, this is a very doable practice. You don't have to sacrifice style if you're only getting clothes from the thrift store. So we can jump onto food. The Buddha's reflections for contemplating food are wisely reflecting, I use food. Not for fun, not for pleasure, not for fattening, not for beautification, only for the maintenance and nourishment of this body, for keeping it healthy, for helping with the holy life. Thinking thus, I will allay old feelings without creating new feelings. Thus, I can continue to live blamelessly and at ease. So, really being intentional about how you choose the foods that you're going to eat, how much you eat, and making those choices based on what will lead to the maximum increase of wholesome dhammas, wholesome or skillful qualities, and the maximum decrease of unwholesome qualities. So with food, more than hatred, most people don't choose their food based on hate, but it can be, you can choose your food oftentimes, maybe most every day, based on just following the sensual desire for just the best tastes, regardless of what effect that's going to have on your mind. And it can also lead to and be inspired by delusion. So certainly after a huge meal with a lot of like heavy foods, you're just like, your eyes get more and more like this, and you're like more and more just intoxicated. Basically, you've been, overused food in a certain unskillful way. So questioning your food choices. One kind of cool test, which you can administer to yourself as you're going through your thoughts about what you're going to make for lunch, or if you're in a buffet, what you're going to choose for lunch. And it's called, I like to call it the cake test. So that stands for the kusala with a K, akusala, A-K. So that's K-A-K test. And kusala means wholesome or unwholesome. So you give every piece of food that you're going to choose the cake test. Is this going to lead to kusala or akusala, wholesome or unwholesome mind states? And oh yeah, these French fries, they would be awesome. They'd be great. I haven't had hot French fries in 12 years. That would be great if I just got some, the biggie size or extra biggie size. You probably got super extra biggie size now. But in any event, yeah, is that going to lead to the most beautiful mind states? For me, definitely not in the past. But again, maybe it does for you, and fair enough. So yeah, give your food the cake test. The dhutangas for monks related to food are 5 in number. So we've got the alms food eater practice. So for monastics, this is basically you don't accept food which has been made at the monastery. You just accept food that you collect in your alms bowl as you go through alms round in a city. It's much easier for monastic to do in Thailand, where the alms tradition is still a living and vibrant and beautiful, active custom, which one sees every day, every morning. So how could you practice alms food as a layperson? It's a good question. You probably don't want to. It's probably not a non-monastic's place to necessarily beg food from others if you do have a livelihood of some other sort. But yeah, think about that. I don't actually have a good answer right now. Maybe we can think of one. If someone does have one, you can write it in the comments, and I'll love to see that. Another practice is of the dhutangas for monastics is the house-to-house eaters. So what this means is that when monks are on their alms round, they will go to every single house, no matter whether it's in a slum or if it's in the best neighborhood of town. They go to every house. They don't kind of just choose, I'm going to go to the mansions because they're going to give me some of this nice food. You go to every house, and yeah, you don't just go to the houses which will offer the type of food you like. So this is a practice of contentment. And yeah, how could you practice that as a non-monastic? There's an interesting food. I mean, you have so many different dietary books giving you all sorts of different ideas. One of them I've heard about is the slow carb. You have low carbs, but you also got slow carbs. And there's 5 basic principles for that. This is a non-monastic. This isn't a Buddhist Buddha list, but one of them is to eat the same meals, often. So basically, you've got your Monday meal, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. And yeah, you know what you're going to eat that day. And maybe this could be a house-to-house eater type equivalent for non-monks, is that, yeah, whatever my Monday menu is, I'm going to eat it on Mondays, regardless of, whether I want to eat that thing or not. Just a thought. No pressure, people. Even for monks, these are optional practices. Another dhutanga for monks is the eating in one sitting. So what this entails is basically in Thailand and in America, you've got, and any other place where you have Buddhist monastics, is basically just eating in one session. So in Thailand, at forest monasteries in the Ajahn Chah tradition, they're very strict with this practice often of you go on your alms round. This is early in the morning. You leave the monastery 5 or 6 a.m. You get back to the monastery 7. The food is offered at 8. And basically you eat your food at 8:30, and that's your one meal for the day. And so this is a one meal practice. And yeah, maybe this could work for people. I think periodic or intermittent fasting is something which is starting to be in vogue and getting more public acceptance, or certainly there are many doctors which are practicing this intermittent fasting, and yeah, why not give it a try? For monks, we have rules which we can't eat afternoon, but at many monasteries we'll have 2 meals. So one in the morning and one before noon. But the fewer meals you eat, then the fewer meals you have to cook, the fewer meals you have to clean up after. And yeah, could this work for you as a layperson? I know there are many people since the time of the Buddha, non-monastics, who have taken on the practice of what's called uposatha sila, or basically once or twice a week, not eating afternoon. So this is one way to lessen thy meals, which, as the old adage says, to lengthen thy life, lessen thy meals. So that's a non-Buddhist quote. The Buddha himself said, talking to the monks, he said, "Monks, I get by on one meal a day, and I'm doing healthy and preserving myself in a state of comfort. You too, monks, eat one meal a day, and you can experience health and comfort." So that said, we've got the option as monks and as non-monks to experiment with this. See if it works. You might love it, which would be great. Another of these dhutangas related to food is to eat all of your food out of one bowl. So I actually did see a book written for non-monks. It was just like almost like a diet book, a Western diet book written by a American author, I'm pretty sure. I would imagine most diet books are written by Americans. Not sure if that's true, just a guess. But yeah, I think the name of this book was One Bowl. And basically he was suggesting that you try this practice as lay people, eating all of your food in one bowl. Get a beautiful bowl that you love, and yes, get to know that bowl. Use it every day for your meals, and you'll get to know how much, like what percentage of this bowl you need to have full to feel like you've gotten your fill of food. It can just be a beautiful practice if you get a nice clay ceramic bowl, and just treat it with respect. You'll need fewer dishes, you'll need to do fewer dishes, and you'll get to know the quantities a lot better than if you're using different size plates and all sorts of stuff. So experiment. See, this might be something which works for you. So those are the 4 dhutangas for monks and maybe for lay people, which relate to alms food. So that's alms food eating, the house-to-house practice, eating in one sitting, the one bowl practice, and one more is the later food refuser. So for monastics, what this means is, I've eaten for the day, and then I mark in my mind, enough, done, I'm done for the day. And it's a optional choice that you can make just to bring parameters into your life. And discipline equals freedom, as the popular podcast person named Jocko Willink says, discipline equals freedom. And he's a really tough guy. I don't listen to that podcast, but I've seen that book exists. So you could experiment with this as non-monastics. So what would it mean to refuse? So basically make a mental determination after you've finished your last bite, I'm done. I know one layman who, after he finishes eating, he will floss his teeth. He'll brush and floss. And basically that is the symbol and the signal and the determination for himself that I'm done for today, or I'm done for the next however many hours. So that can be really helpful in a culture and a society which praises snacking, and just snacking is just so ubiquitous and so easy, at your work site or even around the house. It's just easy to snack away. But if you've got this determination, oh no, I finished for today, then you don't need to kind of turn in that direction. The next realm after food is one's lodging. And the Buddha's reflection is, wisely reflecting, I use the lodging only to ward off cold, to ward off heat, to ward off the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, burning, and creeping things, only to remove the danger from weather and for living in seclusion. So that's the basic need. For monastics, the Buddha gave us the example of a tree. Basically, that's the root of a tree. That's all a human could need if you've got psychological wherewithal. That's a big if. There are, again, 6 different practices, dhutangas, which the Buddha gave for tough monks, tough male and female monks, to practice when they want to. I'll just list those out. Those are living just at the foot of a tree, living in a forest, using any bed, so your bed or some other bed, the floor, open air dwelling, so living out rather than even underneath a tree, you're just out in the open. Living in a charnel ground, that's a pretty weird one for many Americans to think about. What that means is basically a graveyard, sort of. It's good reflection for remembering death. And the sixth one is the sitter's practice, where you don't even lie down. So yeah, there are useful things for a monastic to think about there. And when you see people practicing this, which you do a lot in Thailand, but you do even in monasteries in the West, I've got monk friends here in America who, yeah, are practicing many of these, in America at monasteries. It's not the case that just because a monk is living in a monastery that he's living in a nice, hut. I've got quite a few friends who are living in either self-made kind of wooden type sheds, or even under tarps. You got a 10 by 10 tarp, or even an 8 by 8 tarp, and using that as a tent and living in that for, large parts of the year. I've got a couple of really Trojan monk friends who do that practice on a regular basis and really feel that it helps their contentment. It kind of gives them this sense of mental strength and energy. So as lay people, you can practice this as periodic camping. See what it's like. Go out and see what it's like to live not underneath your normal roof, but to live in a tent, live underneath a tarp, live in a shed. These type of things. Just pushing your boundaries. This is where growth comes. And all of us, monks and lay people, it's so easy just to, it's the easiest thing in the world to slide imperceptibly into just comfiness. I've got my situation, and and that's fair enough. If it's harder, to cultivate samatha or mental relaxation for many people, maybe even most people, in these difficult to live in environments. So you're cultivating other good dhammas, like strength, wherewithal, mindfulness. You have to know you're paying attention to nature in different ways that you don't have to when you're living underneath a roof. But it's harder to be tranquil, for the mind to settle down in these unfamiliar environments. But for someone who already has strength of mind and skill in tranquility and concentration, then it can be just wonderful. You don't have people coming and bidding for your time if you're living out in the forest. So so see what you can do. Try camping, even in your backyard, or try sleeping not on your bed. See what that's like for a night, and see what it's like. Or pull your bed onto the floor, pull the mattress onto the floor, put it in a different room. Experiment, just shift things around and see what it does to your mind and to your meditation practice. The final requisite, which the Buddha mentioned, is medicines, and his reflection for practitioners is: wisely reflecting, I use supports for the sick and medicinal requisites only to ward off painful feelings that have arisen and for the maximum freedom from disease. So how much medicine do we need to take? And in the time of the Buddha, the medicines which he mentions, and he mentions a lot in the set of teachings to the monks in the Vinaya Pitaka. But so these were largely herbal medicines. But today it includes modern medicine. So, but see how much do you need, and then use that amount. We're not talking about deprivation in any of these realms. It's basically seeing about what is the optimum amount, optimum way of using these things, which increases wholesome mental qualities, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, morality, generosity even, and which ones decrease unwholesome dhammas like greed and rivalrousness and comparing and delusion and even anger. So experiment. This is, an open invitation for people who would like to see, it's oftentimes when you put yourself in an unusual situation that you figure things out about your mind and about your practice and about your life that you wouldn't have known before. So I offer these reflections for this morning, and we can open this up to questions. Okay. Looks like we've got a number of people watching. That's great. Someone's saying that they picked the wrong day to have donuts and Mountain Dew for breakfast. Maybe. And again, one thing which is important to consider for the way that we're choosing foods and otherwise is that the Buddha had very few prescriptions, prohibitions on what types of food that monks could eat. So there are many other wandering sects which are much more explicit about you can eat this, you can't eat that. But for monastics in the Buddhist tradition, it's basically what is offered on alms round, as long as it's there are some prohibited foods, but I think one of the reasons why the Buddha didn't give long lists of prohibited food, like he didn't mention, even if Mountain Dew and donuts had been existent in the time of the Buddha, I don't know whether he would have prohibited them. I can't say for sure, but one useful discourse to reflect on is the Buddha's definition of sensuality. This is in the Anguttara Sixes, and he says, they are not sensual pleasures, the beautiful things of the world. The beautiful things of the world remain just as they are, but the wise remove desire for them. So this is an important principle. There's nothing inherently wrong with donuts and Mountain Dew. I think most practitioners, people who are starting to pay attention to their mind, might agree that I can certainly say for myself, certainly after a number of donuts, and I don't want to say publicly what that number is, but yeah, probably, moderation in your donuts and caffeinated beverages is a good thing. But again, it's not their fault. There's nothing inherently evil about those certain substances. It's just how we relate to them. Here's another thought. So I wonder if practicing alms could be not just for the individual practitioner going on alms round, but rather by volunteering in a soup kitchen, by serving those that have nothing and to eat with them. Whoa, that is awesome. Yeah, well, very well said. It's kind of like reverse alms. And I guess you could say that, certainly in English usage, the people, say in Thailand or in America, who are giving alms food to monastics or to homeless people, for that matter, as you mentioned, they're going for alms, in a sense. They're going to offer alms. And that's true with every person offering in villages throughout Thailand, Sri Lanka, Burma, Vietnam. But it's also true in Seattle. So these days, every day, Tan Nisabo is going for alms in Pike's Place Market from Monday through Friday. You can check out the calendar, clearmountainmonastery.org, and see where he is. And if you wanted to go practice alms and practice the alms food giving practice, very beautiful recollection. And then eating with people. You're oftentimes I remember I used to go volunteer. My last formal job was working at a homeless shelter, and I would often go and volunteer with Food Not Bombs, which is, I imagine it's still around, maybe not COVID time, but you unless you're the cook, which I never was, yeah, you're not choosing what is being served that day. So yeah, if you're serving the food, which is a beautiful thing, and then eating whatever it is, then yeah, that's a practice of choicelessness for you as well. So that's beautiful. One related practice to alms food giving, the alms practice, is what's called saraniya practice. I've mentioned this before. I first came across this practice in Sri Lanka, and saraniya means that which should be remembered, or that which leads to communal harmony. And what it's referring to is basically, there's a discourse where the Buddha mentions 6 things which lead to communal harmony, and one of them is that you share everything, with your friends, specifically monk brother and sister friends in the holy life, including the contents of your alms bowl. So how this was actually practiced in the monastery that I was visiting in Sri Lanka was that before eating, so basically everyone would go on alms round, and then before they would actually sit down to eat, they would go around, at least to one other monk, and take food out of their bowl and put it into someone else's bowl. And isn't that awesome? Isn't that a great practice? I mean, you're basically practicing giving before getting, giving before consuming, generosity before consumption, which is certainly a more beautiful mind state. And if you live alone or you don't have someone to give to, you can certainly give something to the people in your family. But if you live alone, yeah, you can save a little bit of food, take it out, and throw it out to the birds. It's not a waste. Birds, squirrels, these beings need to eat as well. And yeah, just giving in that way, that's also a big practice I've been living at various Chinese monasteries recently, and that's a big part of practice. Before you eat is you offer food to not just birds and other beings that you can see, but also to invisible beings, which is offering food to invisible beings. That's a whole other topic, which I can't really speak much to. But the intent, the heart of the matter, is basically practicing giving before taking. So great point. Thank you. Here's another question. So one practice that I've found helpful for many years is to wear only one color. In the winters, I wear brown shirts and pants, and in the summer, when it is hot, I wear light beige shirts and pants. This is awesome. And the next comment is, it saves time and thought every morning. This is, again, beautiful. And yeah, maybe, if people wanted, just to share your other thoughts rather than, certainly people are free to ask questions, but this kind of creative layperson, non-monastic, non-cloistered, interesting Dhamma practice, useful, creative Dhamma practices that you take on. This is beautiful. Yeah, so only wearing one color, that's great. A monastic equivalent of that, which is pretty cool, which again wouldn't be so nice for lay people, but I've known monks who practice the rectangle practice. So the Buddha never mentioned this, but basically it's only wearing rectangles. So the Buddha did allow for monks having more than just these 3 robes. So he allowed for all sorts of other types of requisite cloth, as it's called, because he, could see that, people aren't all going to be living in the central Ganges valleys in a tropical climate, which is conducive to minimal clothes wearing. So he allowed, all other types of clothing. But yeah, so monks wear jackets and things, but the rectangle practice is only wearing rectangles. So you got your major robes and your lower robe, and instead of a hat, you can wear like a handkerchief or something. And it certainly makes for more fun on laundry day when, there might be some people who like folding non-square things, but maybe I'm old-fashioned, but folding rectangles and squares is a lot more enjoyable for myself. Another reflection. Yes. Is it not called minimalism? Very true. Yeah, there are whole YouTube channels and kind of like a modern movement of, yeah, I think minimalism is, yeah, very, I mean, where minimalism has probably existed for a long time, but kind of this modern movement of people living in tiny houses or just having a bare number of clothing options. Yeah, this is another place to become inspired. You can go on some of these YouTube channels or visit, yeah, various different blogs which talk all about how, and these are pretty much entirely non-monastic sites which say, yeah, for someone living in the world, practice this minimalism, living in a small house, living in a trailer. And you've got people who are doing this in a really beautiful way. Again, this isn't about like making your clothing and your dwelling and all your food as ugly as possible. This is not about self-torture, really. It's about, yeah, just keeping things as simple as possible so that you can focus on what matters. And what is it that matters? You might want to stack rank your life and see how you're spending your time. And does how you're spending your time relate well to what those priorities are? This is something to look into. And if not, one very useful way to become, say, more productive, if you want to do that, then is to cut your commitments in half, or to, yeah, just spend less time on the things which you can automate or just get rid of or abandon. So, yeah, I really appreciate people writing in with their ways of practicing minimalism, and yeah, some beautiful ideas which I hadn't heard before, hadn't heard expressed in this way. So yeah, thank you, everyone. We've got a few more minutes, maybe a little bit of an update. So I mentioned it a little bit earlier that Tan Nisabo is now living in the Seattle area and is going on alms round every day. You can go to clearmountainmonastery.org to see where he is if you wanted to practice giving alms. And yeah, he's practicing a lot of these Dhutanga practices, and yeah, you can see him. And like many people who I've met in Thailand and in America, it's interesting, it's not always the case. It's not a direct causal relationship that everyone who minimalizes to the maximum extent is going to be that much happier and that much more bright. But yeah, when you start looking in these different minimalist circles, whether they're monastic or otherwise, you see people who are very bright, very energetic, and yeah, it's encouraging and thought-provoking. Like, if they can do it, why can't I? If they can be bright and joyful, with 3 robes, or just eating whatever people put into their alms bowls, just eating 1 meal a day, just living at the foot of a tree, and they're bright, and you see them, and you can tell that something is going right in their life. They're doing something right. You say, oh, maybe I can do that too. Maybe I don't need all these things which I thought I did. So experiment, see if that's the case. So yeah, maybe we'll call that a day, and I hope everyone has a good rest of the day. Maybe just one final thought, because it's a good one. It is also helpful for the environment to simplify and consume less. Very beautiful thought to end on. Oh, we got one more question, so almost end on. Yeah, so true. Whether one believes in global warming or not, or climate change, yeah, you are contributing to less. Your carbon footprint is decreasing. These are basically inventive ways to decrease your carbon footprint, and and yeah, increase your Dhammic footprint, so to say. One last question. This is, could you elaborate on the sound of silence during meditation if you have time? Okay, everyone else can sign off if you want. Thank you for coming, everyone. Yeah, the sound of silence. Actually, Ajahn Kachana, whose mother is tuning in today, has a beautiful reflection on the sound of silence, which is that the sound of silence is the auditory equivalent of the light nimitta, or the meditation on the perception of light. So just as perceiving light in the visual field kind of brightens the mind, so too paying attention to the nada sound, that kind of high-pitched noise which is constantly going on in the background if you listen for it, can also brighten the mind. So yeah, experiment with it. There's an Abhidhammic perspective which says that you cannot have experience two different objects in the same mind moment. So there might be an argument that you cannot pay attention to the nada sound and the breath at the same time. Mind moments are very, very small, but I'd say in my own practice I have found benefit from yoking the two. So paying attention to the nada sound and the breath. And whether or not that's the exact same mind moment and it's just an expansive object that I'm paying attention to, or whether it's in successive mind moments, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, paying attention to that frequency can clarify and sharpen and crisp. It makes the breath crispy in a really enjoyable way. So yeah, tune in as much as you can to that sound and see what it can do to your meditation. So I think I might leave it at that for today. But yeah, experiment. That's often a good thing to do. So leave it at that. Have a good day, everybody.